Hello everybody, and welcome to Rise of the Western World, Unit 2, Part 4. And in this video today, we're going to look at the Age of Discovery. At the start of the 15th century, Portugal was not a world power. It rested at the western edge of Europe in the Iberian Peninsula, along with Spain, physically separated by the Pyrenees Mountains. In fact, Portugal's economic conditions were so desperate that in 1415 they raided, captured, and plundered a Moroccan seaport across the Strait of Gibraltar. However, due to its advantageous geographic location, as well as its maritime culture, Portugal would become the first global empire spanning multiple continents and hemispheres. So we consider this essential question: how did Portugal begin the Age of Discovery? The main initiator of this age of exploration was Prince Henry the Navigator. He used his position and Portugal's money to attract navigators, cartographers, astronomers, and other specialists to aid in developing technology to explore and chart the western coast of Africa. The agglomeration of people and wealth in one location greatly accelerated the pace of progress. Under Prince Henry's leadership, the caravel was developed. This ship was made to be smaller, lighter, and more maneuverable than the ships used for the Mediterranean Sea. The caravel combined the stern-post rudder, lateen and square sails, and many new innovations. Now the Portuguese had a vessel capable of traversing the open seas. They were highly motivated to find the source of the Western African gold trade, as well as to spread their Christian faith. The Ottoman victory at Constantinople in 1453 shocked the Europeans' sense of security, as well as increasing the prices of many goods. This motivated the Europeans to search for alternate routes to the riches of the East, and Portugal was in the perfect position to lead the way. Years turned into decades, and the Portuguese proceeded to travel further down Africa's coast. By 1471, the Portuguese had reached the equator, and found the ocean there did not boil. After further voyages, they realized the temperatures decreased as they sailed further south. Then, in 1497, Bartholomew Diaz commanded a sea expedition to find a route to the Indian Ocean. On the voyage, his ship was blown off course by a violent storm. In attempting to find the coast again, Diaz and his crew discovered they had rounded the southern tip of Africa. Facing potential mutiny, he wisely chose to return to Portugal, discovering the Cape of Good Hope on the way back, and then reaching port in 1488. Now it was only a matter of time before another expedition would be funded to complete the journey. This map is notable because it was the first in Europe to depict the southern tip of Africa. You can see it looks as if he used a previous map and added the waters around the Cape of Good Hope. With such a head start, we have to ask, why didn't Portugal discover and dominate the New World? Soon after Portugal had found the southern tip of Africa, Christopher Columbus sought funding for a voyage across the Atlantic. Now, in 1469, King Ferdinand of Aragon married Queen Isabella of Castile, uniting their Catholic lands and creating the country of Spain. For centuries, the Europeans engaged in the Reconquista, or reconquest, in which they fought against the Islamic Moors and pushed out the Jews from the Iberian Peninsula. One of the main goals for Spain was to create more of a nation-state, where the vast majority of the people of a country share similar cultural attributes, such as language, religion, or heritage. By 1492, Ferdinand and Isabella completed the Reconquista by driving out the Moors in the southern lands of Granada, and they were looking to expand the reach and power of their now unified nation. Columbus sought an audience with Isabella to seek funding, and was initially turned away since her advisors believed Columbus's measurements of the length of the Atlantic Ocean were highly inaccurate. In reality, his estimation of the length of the equator was more than 6,000 miles shorter than it actually was. Nonetheless, Isabella did agree to fund his expedition, and in 1492 he sailed for Asia with 3 well-known ships, the Nina, the Pinta, and the Santa Maria. Contrary to some reports, he didn't try to prove the Earth was round because most educated people had accepted this reality for centuries. Later in 1492, Columbus landed on what is now called San Salvador, an island in the Bahamas. He mistakenly believed they had reached the islands off the coast of Japan in the Indies, which is why he later referred to these inhabitants as Indians. However, back in Spain, some people began to suspect the land Columbus found was part of a new world. Isabella claimed the newly discovered lands as her own personal property and appealed to the Pope for exclusive rights to the territory. In 1493, a line of demarcation was drawn from pole to pole around 400 miles west of the Canary Islands. All new lands to the east of that line were granted to Portugal, whereas all new lands to the west were granted to Spain. Later, in 1494, the line was moved further west through the Treaty of Tordesillas. However, the treaty only gave these countries rights to lands south of the Canary Islands. After Diaz's expedition, an all-water route around Africa was not only attainable, but inevitable. In the summer of 1497, Vasco da Gama led a fleet of 4 ships with a crew of 170 men around the Cape of Good Hope and on to India. He traded with the merchants in silver and gold, paying a fraction of the normal prices in Europe. Da Gama returned to Portugal with a load of spices and goods that earned them more than 60 times the initial investment. For decades, the Portuguese would dominate the Atlantic Sea trade. In 1500, the Portuguese discovered Brazil in what is now South America. A year later, another expedition went there to explore the new territory. On board was Amerigo Vespucci, a navigator and cartographer who believed all the new territory discovered in the Western Hemisphere was actually an entirely new world. In 1507, the German cartographer Martin Waldseemüller combined Vespucci's accounts along with those of Columbus to construct a new map depicting the New World, which he labeled America, naming it after Amerigo Vespucci. Just be glad he didn't name it Vespuccia. The Portuguese sent viceroys or vice-kings to India, who led the construction of several fortresses around the Indian Ocean to control trade in the area. By the mid-1500s, the Portuguese reached China and Southeast Asia, opening up direct trade with those areas. Portugal, a small nation with a population of less than 2 million citizens, established the first truly intercontinental empire in all of human history. They connected the continents of Europe, South America, Africa, and Asia. More goods from around the world changed hands more often than at any time before, and European culture began to diffuse worldwide. A new era of globalization had begun, changing the course of history forever.